Hey, stop.
Right.
Doesn't know who it is.
Okay, so we talked to Mitch yesterday, Mitch Rogers. This is Erin, his wife Erin, and I thought it would be interesting to get your perspective because I think you probably have a little different experience, obviously being married to a black man. So first off, I have to ask you though, I forget, where did you come from?
Here.
You're in Springfield.
Yes, I'm born and raised here, whole life. I've never escaped.
Just like me.
Yeah.
But when you were in high school and things like that, I mean, was it common for interracial dating, or how?
I was raised Catholic. I did kindergarten through 8th grade at a Catholic parochial school here in town. But then in high school, I went to public high school. I went to Lanphier. And so prior to going to high school, I had almost no exposure to black people.
Right.
My school, kindergarten through 8th grade, there was probably a total of around 600 students, and I can remember 2 black kids. And I don't remember kids of any other ethnic background. So that was just very much, what I was used to.
And your parents didn't have like maybe black friends where they would hang out, so that had to be a culture shock.
It was
a little bit.
At going into high school, my thought process was I can go to Catholic school where it's all girls, or I can go to public school where it's girls and boys. That was my thought process. So yeah, I often say that as an adult that was a huge culture shock. I had never been around that many people and that many different kinds of people. And not just that there were, African American people there, but there were all kinds of people there. So yeah, that was new. I feel like during my 4 years in high school, it almost kind of became a thing, particularly for white girls to go out with black
Like
friends.
the athletes, maybe even.
Very
so.
much so.
Right.
I knew lots of girls who did. I had friends. I made friends with people who were black, but I never dated anyone. No.
And was it one of those where just there was really nobody that really caught your eye, or did you feel like, this is just not a line I'm going to cross?
Yeah, that was probably more of it. Because I won't say there weren't some people that there was some good flirtation going on with.
It's high school, for God's sakes.
But yeah, I think I was just afraid to cross that line, so I didn't.
Right.
I had a friend that I went all through grade school with, and we went to high school together, and she did cross that line. And her parents, our senior year in high school, took her out of our high school and moved her to the Catholic high school.
Wow.
So I didn't want to deal with all that, and I had enough other things to do.
A lot of drama.
I didn't care, but whatever, I didn't care.
It just didn't bother you either way.
No, but I didn't cross the line probably mostly because I knew I had friends who wouldn't accept it, and I knew that my parents would be an issue. So.
Now, did they ever say to you straight out, like, we just don't want you bringing a black boy home, or you know what I mean, or was it just kind of that unspoken?
I think probably when I was young it was unspoken, but when I was, I don't know, maybe 9, 10, I can't remember how old I was, my dad was one of 8 children, and his youngest sister was pregnant. She wasn't married, and she had told her parents, and so her, my grandparents, and they had told the rest of the family, she's pregnant, she's not married, she's having a baby, and the baby's going to be black, half black. So that was probably in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. I don't remember exactly how old I was, so. And I do remember my parents telling us about it. I do remember that everybody was upset at first, and nobody was going to have anything to do with her. My memory is that changed pretty quickly. I do recall that she ended up moving back in and living with my grandparents and, you know, her daughter too. Yeah. And ironically, what I remember is that pretty much all of my aunts and uncles kind of accepted this, and you know what, it just
we
is
love
what
her.
it is,
She's beautiful, and
except my dad.
Really, really.
And I remember my dad saying, I don't hate my sister, I don't hate that baby, but I don't want my kids to grow up and think it's okay. And look what I did.
Interesting.
So I remember that there were holidays that we didn't go over there because my aunt was there with the baby. Now eventually that all kind of
warmed up,
softened up and changed, and I think it has in part to do with his generation.
That's just what he knew, and that's just the way.
And he kind of was a lot harder about it and harsher about it than his parents and his siblings, but eventually that all came around and was okay.
So fast forward.
Yes.
To because you guys started dating when you were both working at the hospital.
Yes.
And because Mitch is just amazing. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. He's a good man and he's a good person. But what was it like when you first met him and you're like, I think I kind of like this guy, you know?
Well, at first we worked together, and so you remember I was a nurse on pediatrics, and so for this big black man to come down the hall and he's gonna work with kids, so at first it was very surprising, like, well, that's weird, but he was very nice to everybody,
and gentle,
and he was really good with the babies, with the little kid. He was just really good. He was always willing to help out and do whatever we asked him to do, and everybody loved him. But I do think that was one of the things that kind of drew me to him too, is the fact that he was so good with everybody. These poor little sick kids and their crazy parents who were losing their minds. And
oh yeah, we had a couple of fights in the PDICU back in the day.
Yeah.
Right.
So there was all of that, but I don't know. And he's an attractive guy. He always smelled good,
So then what happened? Did he ask you out, or were you guys just always hanging out in the same place? Or?
Eventually that was kind of more what it was, was we just, because of working together, we were either working together or groups of people went out together, and eventually we were talking more, and there were, there was like a, like these one-day courses or whatever that we have to take, like we ended up in a couple of those, and just spending more time, and the more time you spend together, the more you kind of like each other.
Did you get to the point though where you're like, I don't know if I
not really
can open this door?
At that point, I was close to 30. Right. So, when I was probably 28, 29 at that point, but like, I'm not, I can't get in trouble. Nobody's gonna ground me.
No, true. But still, there is that, and I've had it where my parents maybe don't necessarily agree with my decisions, and there is
agree with most of them.
There's a change in our relationship and how we communicate, but still, like, it kind of, hurts my feelings or whatnot.
I knew that it was not going to be a smooth, easy kind of thing, but I also was kind of, defiant, like, well, too bad.
I'm just going to do it.
I'm an adult. I take care of myself. I have a kid. I have a job. I have a mortgage. I have, I can take care of myself.
I get it, but parents still make you feel like you're 12 years old.
They can.
Right,
they certainly can. And so I know, and early on, my tactic was just to avoid it.
Well, that's what I was saying. So
I don't have to tell them.
How far into the relationship did it go until you finally kind of?
I wish I could tell you I remember, but I honestly don't.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think we had been dating a year, but I mean, getting pretty close to
Wow.
that, maybe 6, 9 months somewhere.
So
in
it
there.
wasn't where, hey, it's Thanksgiving, you want to come over and
No.
have turkey?
No, because he wasn't really willing to do that until he knew that I had a conversation with him. And like he told you yesterday, I mean, he really did. He said to me, you have to tell your parents.
Right.
And so I did, and they were not thrilled, and I believe, if I remember correctly, I ended up storming out of their house, and I don't really remember after that whether I called my mom or my mom called me, or but it started with my mom and me having a conversation and kind of starting from there, and I think, like Mitch told you yesterday as well, eventually it was like, okay, well, he's not going anywhere, so
right, and 20 years later.
And the other thing too was, once I told them, then started letting the rest of the family know, and everybody else, grandparents, aunts, uncles, they're like, that's fine, bring him out, we're having Thanksgiving, we're having Christmas, whatever we're doing. And I remember one of my uncles, I think it was Christmas Eve, I was over there, and he said, well, why didn't you bring your friend? And I said, and he said, Erin, don't worry about your dad. Yeah. It's all going to work out. You know. And he was actually working that night, but a lot of times he chose to work to avoid that stuff until he felt like it was okay.
Do you think, and with your dad, I mean, did he ever say straight out, like, okay, I'm worried about you, I don't want it to be harder for you, or, I've had bad experiences and I flat out just don't like black people. I mean, what was it?
It was more, I'm worried about you and how this will affect you. And remember, I had been married before, and I had a little boy. He was little at the time, and he was white, and
he still is.
He still is white. He hasn't changed. So it was stuff like that. I don't want any, I don't want any negativity
backlash
for you or anything for him.
They don't. You probably didn't want your life to be any harder than what it.
But I will tell you, another thing was, I had been married before. I had been in other relationships that were messy, bad choices. I had a history of not making good choices where men were involved. And
Yeah, we all. Yeah.
So for my dad, honestly, it wasn't just the fact that he's black. It was also,
here we go again.
Yes, it really, really was.
Right.
And I think that it was hard for that to be conveyed because everybody instinctively wanted to go, well, it's because he's black.
Right.
And I'm not saying that wasn't a piece of the puzzle. It certainly was. He never told me anything like, I just had bad experiences with black people, and it was never anything like that. And after he and Mitch went and talked that night, it just kind of continued to improve between the two of them. Everybody else just really was kind of okay with the whole thing. And then, when we had Caleb, that was it sealed the deal. And Mitch and my dad actually were very close. When my dad got sick, he ended up being in inpatient hospice.
Right.
And Mitch was working there at the time, and so every day, and I don't know, my dad was probably in there for 10 days, 2 weeks, and so every day Mitch spent time with them, and Mitch is the last person that ever took my dad outside.
Wow. To
be able to see, to go outside, and so they did end up being very close, and my family, they probably like him better than they like me. But I think everybody, my parents parents in particular, I think that they've learned a lot too. You know, of course, Dad's gone now, but I think in the time that he, you know, was still with us through all of this, he did learn that all the stereotypes aren't what you think they are, and yeah, it really is true. Sometimes you got to look past the cover of the book, and also learning to trust me again, you know, and believe in my decisions. They're not all bad. But part of that too was me maturing, you know.
So let me ask you this. So, because the other part that's interesting is you had a part of your life where you weren't really yoked to an African American and walking through this life and those experiences. So what has kind of opened your eyes, or what things have you noticed differently? Like you're like, wow, I don't think I noticed that before, or what? You know, I mean, just in general.
I think I probably didn't tend to pay attention to a lot of things that were going on around me. I didn't pay attention to how people reacted. You know, he really had to kind of point that stuff out to me at the beginning. The way, you know, the way somebody behaved toward us in a restaurant.
Or when you walk up to ask for a table.
Yeah.
Do you want one? No, there's two of us, or those subtleties that,
those little things that I really didn't pay attention to, and he would, you know, say, well, did that ever happen to you before you were with, never really thought, you know, so little things like that. I will say I think we've been fortunate that we haven't really had any overt, you know, nobody's been like horrible to us or anything.
What about when you travel?
So far we haven't had any issues. He always jokes that we're not going to Mississippi, we're not going to Alabama.
You know, and I feel bad, and you know, citizens of Mississippi and Alabama, when we've driven through there, everybody has been phenomenal. But do I get a little tightening in my chest if we have to get gas and we're like driving through a town of 500 and there's one, there's this part of me like, honey, you get out the car and you get it, I'm staying. I do, and that's a stereotype. I shouldn't do that either. Well, but you're right, I do get a little nervous.
He does, and sometimes I'm like, that's just silly. But you know, as I pay more attention to the things that occur in the world to me, it's like, that's really not silly. These things really do happen to real people. Just, you know, when you think, oh my gosh, things like that don't happen anymore. They do. And so, yeah, I think I pay more attention to that kind of stuff. I know you mentioned yesterday, talked about going to big cities where there's a lot more diversity. I have found with us too, we love going to big places where we have the same experience. We're like, oh, this is so awesome. There's so many different kinds of people and nobody looks at you weird or sideways or.
Yeah, and how do people look at you? Let me ask you this, because with you, if it's just you and Caleb, because I remember my kid's dad, he would go places with the kids and they'd be like, what are you doing with those two kids? I'm like, well, that's their dad. But because there's that difference in skin tone, and you know, are you the babysitter? Are you the aunt? Are you just hanging? You know what I mean? Like,
good question. I have no idea. I don't know what people think. I mean, but he is very cognizant of it. My son, Caleb, he like he'll say, you know, I need to get my hair cut. Okay, I'll take you. No, I don't want you to take me, Mom. I want Dad to take me. You're white. I don't want you to go to the barber shop with me. He's like, Mom, people look at us weird. So he notices it more than I do. You know, again, I'm sure it's because I'm older and more mature, and at this point I'm like,
maybe he just thinks you're hot, and he doesn't want you walking into the barber shop.
I don't think that's what he thinks, but he's, you know, he's a little uncomfortable with that. I mean, so I respect that. He's a teenager, I respect that, but I don't feel like I've had anybody, you know, really question, why are you with this kid, or anything like that. But he's very cognizant of it.
And then what have you, and he'll be 16
in 6 weeks.
Well, and let me ask you this, so with and I don't want to call Caleb out like on his dating experiences, but I was just curious, like what have you seen him, do you feel like he has his guard down where he can just date anybody he wants, or do you feel?
No, but I think that's a lot of his personality. He's more introverted like Mitch, so he's, he has, had girlfriends. He's had girls that he talks to, and they've always been white.
And it's hard because where we live and the schools that he goes to, I mean, we have to say that, 90% of the people that you're going to be around, because, my daughter was kind of the same way. So it's kind of like, that's just who you're kind of immersed with and you communicate with and you feel comfortable with.
Very much
so it's not that I think she would never have dated an African American.
Right.
But it's just kind of who you're around.
Yes. And I think it's the same for him. He's just not super outgoing yet, but I don't think he's particular. That's just, his circle. That's who he's had the most exposure and interaction with and stuff. So, I will say, I just in general, from being married to Mitch, and we have conversations all the time. You can see something on TV and, what about that? And, so over the 20 plus years I've been with him, my thinking about things has evolved so much, and I think we kind of said it yesterday, you don't know what you don't know. And there was a lot that I didn't know, so I didn't know it. But part of the problem is, when you don't know that you don't know it, you assume you do know it. So you make a lot of mistakes, like
unintentionally.
Absolutely unintentionally. African Americans getting pulled over in certain neighborhoods. The naive part of me was like, that doesn't happen anymore.
Or they deserved it. They did something.
Or
they did
I was
something.
very much of the frame of mind that you don't get in trouble if you don't do something wrong.
Right.
So if you're not doing something wrong, you're not going to get pulled over. If you're not doing something wrong, you're not going to get handcuffed and arrested and taken to jail.
Right.
But now I do
understand
experiences. That it really does happen. It really is real. Just because I had never experienced it, I didn't know anybody it had happened to, now I recognize these are real things. And so even like for Mitch, who's never been arrested or anything like that, it's still a real fear for him that it can happen to him simply
anytime,
because of the
anywhere.
way he looks. And Caleb does too. I mean, at 15 years old and being light skinned because he's biracial, he still recognizes that.
Well, and I think that's the hard part because, when my kids were growing up and they're biracial, it always is like, well, I'm half this, I'm half this, I'm half. And I finally had to have this conversation with them. I know you're half, but you need to understand that the world sees you more African American than it does white. And I'm just being very real with them that in your mind, you see like you have the best of both worlds, but the reality is I just think society sees you really as this.
That is
so
very
that's hard.
interesting because, when we had Caleb, Mitch told me early on, you understand that the world sees your son, your baby, as black.
Right.
And I'm like, well, no, they don't. He's got a white mom. He's and just, I've had to live it.
Yeah.
I've had to see it to understand that really is the case. And he knows that. Caleb knows that. And he's fine with that. But for me, that was a real, eye-opener.
Like, hey, I birthed him.
I know. I'm like,
hello.
I grew that baby. I grew him in my body.
Right. And I think, too, and I think he's probably at the age where it's better, but, my kids were at that crux where it used to say African American, Caucasian, other, and Hispanic, or, and they'd be like, what do I put down? And I was just, well, technically, and so now I think as a society we're doing better on that because we are more, multicultural.
Yes,
but
I think a lot of times you see multiple, say multiple races or, whatever. But yeah, that was a, big learning piece for me. I was like, wow. But it's fine.
Right.
I'm fine with it. I will say there are times when, when he doesn't want me to go to the barbershop. I was really
hurts your
hurt at
feelings.
first. I'm like, I am your mom.
But do you think he just wants his dad to take him?
Well, I think it's both.
Both.
I do, the male. I think because of the activity that it is, he wants it to be his dad. But it's also because it's nothing but mostly black people in there, and it's a lot of males. And so he's just a lot more
There's a certain banter that occurs.
Yes. But yeah, they're at first I kind of had my feelings hurt by that, but I've learned, it's not personal.
Right.
But it's me trying to see the world through his eyes or through Mitch's eyes. I can't step into their skin or your skin for that matter. So I'm never gonna have that experience, but I'm so much wiser now, just about
aware.
Yeah. That these things really do happen, and that there are different perceptions.
And I think too, because what I'm kind of hearing and what I know about you is you're not going to negate my experience just because you don't feel it.
But I think I did when I was younger.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say, because
I really think I did when I was younger. Why? Slavery was ended,
why are you people still talking about this?
Yeah.
I didn't enslave nobody.
Right. That was kind of my mindset. Like that happened so
Enough
long
already.
ago.
Come on.
Not realizing the, really having to learn it was technically, but look at everything that's happened since then. Look at how this entire race of people has been treated. You don't just let go of that stuff.
You don't flip the switch and expect it to.
And just because you aren't the one who was enslaved, there is still stuff that's been handed down from generation to generation that's really hard. And, I did not understand that. So, being in my family, I have learned a lot about that and come to really appreciate, people have had a lot of different experiences. Everybody's experience isn't like mine.
Right.
And you gotta open up to that. You have to respect that. And try to understand it. If you try to understand it, I'm not saying I get every nuance of it, I never will. But just trying to be respectful of it and understand it.
And not dismissive. I think that's the hard part, is a lot of times people are so dismissive of my perception or my experience that, it's kind of like just pushing you down.
Oh, that's not really happening.
Yeah, that didn't happen. You're fine. I'm like, oh, no, I think I really felt it.
But just know that when people who don't know, they really don't understand it, because I know I did those things.
Right.
And I'm not perfect. It's not like I'm never going to do it now, but I just feel like I'm much more aware and much more cognizant of it. And, so if Mitch ever says, that person looked at us, or I think service took longer, or we didn't get it, or what, I don't dismiss that now. I don't, I have to stop and think about it, and what, he could be right. So it's you can't dismiss someone else's perspective on that. So
very interesting.
He doesn't, I tell him all the time, you have no idea what it's like to be a tiny white girl either. And he's like, you're right, I know. So, when I tell you, I'm afraid of something, or I feel disrespected about, or what, you are not only a man, you are a big, black man, and you have an intimidation factor just because
you have a
of
presence that maybe
he does.
Yeah.
So when you think about what we do for a living, and over the years, all of our encounters and interactions with, other nurses, with patients, with families, with doctors, there are so many times that people have said and done things to me that they would never say and do to him. So I'm like, by the same token,
there's a flip side to it. There is a flip side to it.
Now his is much greater than mine.
Right.
Sure. I'm not, don't get me wrong, not saying, but I'm just saying for a little perspective there, think about that,
And so, it just brings up that we all, no matter who we are, what our lives have entailed, what our outward ethnicity, physical appearances, we all have these experiences that I think we need to listen to each other and not be so dismissive.
Absolutely.
I think that's the hard part. The dismissiveness, I think, is what, which is really the hard part.
You're right.
Yeah.
When you put it that way, that's
Yeah.
very accurate.
Yeah, because that's when I want to like just stomp my feet and be like, no, I feel this, and you're going to listen to me.
Yeah.
So then I can see where a lot of the frustration and anger, builds up.
But now you're going to say,
help me understand. I am. Help me understand. Help me understand. Yeah, I'm so giving him that T-shirt. That was awesome.
I tease him and tell him that
Yeah.
all the time. You
I
need a
love it.
T-shirt that says that.
I think I'm going to do
I
that.
had a T-shirt, definitely.
Kelly Sandercock, actually, Dr. Dave's wife, actually makes me these T-shirts,
Oh,
which are amazing, and I adore her and love her
lovely.
for that. But we're going to have to make a help me understand shirt.
I like it.
All right.
We'll start a thing.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank
Because
you.
I totally appreciate your perspective. I think
It's-
people, we look at, Mitch's experience, but we forget that's also your experience.
It is.
Mhm.
It is. And I think Mitch talked a little bit yesterday about his life growing up and being with his, his biological family, his black family, until he was about 12 or 13, and then moving in, with his white family. And so I've also been integrated into all of that, and into, a relationship with his white family and his black family, and it's very different, and I love them all.
Right, and how they communicate, and how they.
But it's all very different. But yeah, I mean that has become a part of my life too, and so again, another opportunity to understand where other people are coming from, and their lives and their perspectives, and the more we open up to that and learn about each other, the better the world's going to be, for sure.
Baby steps, ripples.
Yes.
Ripples in the ocean.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Good wine too.
Thank you. I know,
Thanks,
isn't this
Mater.
the best?
Yeah, you might stay and sip.
That's fine with me. Gives me an excuse to sit.